बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम, अस्सलाम वालेकुम नाज़रीन। मैं हूं फैसल मिर्ज़ा और आप देख रहे हैं रिपोर्टर्स 24। आज आपके सामने हम लेके आए हैं डिप्टी नील रिचमंड को, जो कि फिना गेल के टीडी हैं डबलिन रफ्ताम के एरिया से, और यहाँ की जो फिना गेल की जो मेन स्ट्रीम पॉलिटिशियंस हैं उनमें इनका शुमार होता है। ब्रेग्जिट के अंदर इन्होंने काफ़ी काम किया है। ब्रेग्जिट की जो कमेटी है उसे चेयर किया, उसके बाद यूरोपियन यूनियन की जो मैटर्स हैं आयरलैंड से, उसको भी ये डील कर रहे हैं। डिप्टी नील रिचमंड थोड़ी देर में हमें ज्वाइन करेंगे। उससे पहले मैं आपको आज के लाइव का जो मैटर्स हैं और क्यों उसका आना, हमें इस मेहमान को साथ लेके आना क्यों ज़रूरी था, इसके ऊपर मैं बात करूँगा। नील रिचमंड ज्वाइन कर चुके हैं, मैं इन स्ट्रीम पे ला रहा हूँ। Welcome, Neil. Welcome to Reporters 24. Our guest, Neil Richmond, is here. And Neil, can you hear me properly?
Yes, loud and clear. Thanks, Faisal.
Right. So Deputy Neale Richmond, I will give you a bit of his introduction. Neale Richmond was elected as a TD for Dublin Down in 2020 in general election. He was previously elected to Senate, the upper house of Ireland in 2016 on the Labour panel. Before that, he served as a councillor. He worked during the Brexit, and now he is looking after the European Union matters for Ireland. And today we are warmly welcome Neil Richmond on our floor. Neil, I will turn on your TikTok video before we started.
So, are you out this weekend? Could you get a taxi? No, me neither. And it's been like this way for ages across Dublin, and it's not sustainable. The solution to this shortage from the NTA is to increase fares by 12%. It's completely unacceptable, and it's why we've only seen 32 new taxis come into Dublin over the last year. And that's why I'm calling today for the Minister of Transport to reduce the cost of the taxi licence, to reduce the cost of permits for taxis in Dublin Airport, and to bring down all the needless bureaucracy. That's the solution. To find out more, check out finagale.ie.
Neil, taxis, issue of taxis, especially in Dublin on weekends. It's reality. We can see, we can feel. So, you took some initiative. You were on media, you were on social media, and you asked the question, Minister of Transport on 28th and 23rd of June and 28th of June as well. And you got a bit of answers as well. You made a bit of research. You did a bit of research on it and sent your recommendations. Any update for our viewers?
Yeah, thanks, Faisal. So since I started bringing up this issue, I've had a number of engagements with the Dublin Airport Authority, with the National Transport Authority, with Uber, and with other colleagues, as well as representatives and individual drivers from the taxi industry. And there's a couple of issues at stake. We have quite a few taxi drivers in Dublin, but since the pandemic, a lot of them have decided to not go back out driving. They've reached an age where they're close to retirement. So in the first hand, they're having difficulty passing on their plates to their family, and that's something that needs to be looked at. And secondly, one of the biggest problems is only 28% of Dublin's taxi drivers are working those peak times, Friday nights, Saturday nights, leaving many people who might have gone out for a meal or a night out in the Dublin city centre, scrambling for a much reduced rate of taxi service. In addition to that, we're seeing less taxi drivers deciding to go out at peak times to Dublin Airport. So we can see a lot of people who are coming in from a flight are unfortunately facing really long taxi queues. So there's a few things we need to address this, and there has been commitment from the National Transport Agency to look at a couple of the measures in relation to public transport that are parallel to taxis. So first of that, they're looking at extending the Lewis timetable. So as we know, Lewis, the tram that goes across Dublin, it runs late at certain times of year around the Christmas period. I had proposed to do that for St. Patrick's Day this year as well. Unfortunately, it wasn't, and that was a huge missed opportunity. But now, Transdev, the company that operates Lewis, are looking at more late time Lewises, so you can get a Lewis home or wherever you want to go at the weekend past midnight. We've already seen the introduction of some 24-hour bus services in Dublin, some more late night buses. It's been very successful, say, going into my own area, the number 15 route coming from the city centre out to Rathbarnham, Terranure. So Dublin Bus have undertaken to look at extending that further. But back to taxis, where we need to see more efforts, what I put the National Transport Authority on its review is the genuine approach of looking at reducing how much it costs to be a taxi driver. What are the fares? What are the registration fees? Putting up the fares alone is simply putting that cost onto the consumer needlessly. One area that has come up quite a bit is in order to get a new taxi driver license, your taxi has to be wheelchair accessible. Now, whilst this is extremely positive and it's correct, there is unfortunately a number of undue consequences where people whose car isn't wheelchair accessible are unwilling to either continue driving or start driving because they don't want to undertake the work. Finally, I've had a number of meetings with Uber, and I think if we look at how Uber and other ride-sharing services are working across the world, all of us have traveled, we've experienced positively Uber in London or New York or Chicago or on the continent. There's a huge opportunity because a lot of Uber drivers, they're perfectly licensed, they're perfectly vetted, but they're supplementing their own day job with some Uber driving, and they're more likely to do driving at the weekends, Fridays and Saturdays, for example.
Well, Neil, here, you interviewed or you were in contact with MTA or you were in contact with Dublin Airport Authority, but did you interview taxi drivers? Because on my end, I interviewed these taxi drivers. They were really happy with your statement that the bureaucracy should think about to reduce the price of taxi license and plates. But there are people, they think that there should be more plates in the system, or there are people they get old and they go for their retirement. They want to sell their plate to someone, a new driver, but they can't sell it. So do you not think that instead of welcoming Link or these companies Lyft and Uber, don't you think we should open new taxi plates for drivers, so the new drivers will come up in this field within SPSV, and they will drive as a taxi driver instead of we will. It's not. Don't you think it's a strange idea, or it's dangerous to give our nighttime women and our young lads to new Uber and these drivers? They're not. There's no scrutiny for these kind of drivers. What did you think about this?
Well, there is scrutiny with these kind of drivers, and I think unfortunately there's a lot of misinformation about a lot of these ride-sharing apps. It's not just someone who downloads an app and can start driving. They are background checked. They do have to maintain their vehicle to a certain standard. In London, for example, they have to be electronic vehicles. So it's simply incorrect to say it's just some young lad who downloads an app. But I did, of course, speak to a number of taxi drivers as well as to a number of taxi dispatch countries and app operators. And yes, I agree. We need to release more licenses. We need to have the system of passing on and selling licenses to be a lot easier and a lot clearer. But ultimately, there isn't one solution to this problem. We need to adopt a lot of new approaches to nighttime transport. That means more buses going through the night. That means a later Lewis and Dart and commuter rail service. It also means more licenses and making being a taxi driver not only more cheaper for those drivers and potential drivers, easier for them where possible. But yes, we do need to look at the ride-sharing apps like Link and Lyft and Uber, because we see in other cities, growing cities like Dublin, that they are working well. And it goes back to the key point where there's a real pinch point for Dublin is the lack of drivers at the peak time, Friday and Saturday nights. And that's why there's a lot of taxi drivers at the moment who can work a perfectly good living in daytime hours, 4 or 5 airport runs or something equivalent. But we don't have enough people who are convinced of the opportunities of driving at night. And to be honest,
but Neil, these drivers, if we will allow Uber and taxi share riding things, do you think they will work only at evening and nights and weekends, or they will work full day? Like, it's not going to be collapse for taxi industry. Taxi drivers, they hardly make their bit of money during the weekends. So do you think it's not a strange idea?
No, far from it. And if we look how this works in other cities, the yellow cabs in New York haven't disappeared because Uber's come in. You know, there's still room for both. At the moment, we have a chronic shortage of nighttime public transport options. We have a chronic shortage of public transport options across Dublin. How many times have people contacted your station or contact my office who have had have a taxi booked for the airport and it just disappears with 5 or 10 minutes notice? How many people are arriving into Dublin Airport and looking at an hour-long taxi queue? How many people have spent an hour, 90 minutes, 2 hours walking around late at night, unsafe environments in Dublin because there simply isn't enough taxis available? We need to increase the amount of taxis on Dublin streets. We need to make taxi driving more beneficial for those who already are taxi drivers or who would like to become it. But we also need to look at the complementary methods that ride-sharing apps would offer. We just see Brussels, one of the most regulated taxi industries in Europe, has only just moved to allowing Uber in after a success in another part of Belgium. It's a way to go. It's not the solution itself, but I have to stress, Faisal, there isn't one thing that's going to fix it. There is a happy medium and a happy balance here that can ensure drivers can make a comfortable existence, but crucially, we have to ensure that the public of Dublin can get home safe at night, can get in from the airport and have a range of choice of public transport options.
I think when we're talking about safety of people, so do you think on weekend when 11 to 5 o'clock when we are high, do you think it's safe to use Lewis or bus service? As I have a bus stop outside of my home, but everyone doesn't. So do you think it's safe and for people, especially for young people?
Absolutely. I spent my life growing up getting the 48N home from the city centre to my childhood home in Ballantyre. It is perfectly safe, but I understand the concerns, and that's why if we are to extend Lewis into a late night service, we have to approach it like we do at Christmas time when there's late night service, and that means additional Lewis security staff, additional Lewis ticketing staff, as well as cooperation and coordination with An Garda Síochána, the police, to make sure that the Lewis is safe, to make sure that drivers of buses also have that level of safety. The Nightlink has been running for over 30 years, Faisal. Right. It is a very successful service. We need to expand it because the nature of work, it's not just social life, the nature of work is going more and more 24 hours. People just don't work 9 to 5, Monday to Saturday anymore. Plenty of people who've come who are trying to get home from working a night shift, maybe in a bar or anywhere else in the nighttime economy, need to have that access to public transport that someone who's working daytime hours requires as well.
Neil, I have anonymous questions as well. Then I will take the normal questions. This guy is asking, do you think in near future we can see taxi plates, more taxi plates in system, and we can apply for taxi plates because we are entitled and we are allowed to work as a taxi driver? So do you think plates will be reopen again?
I think they will be reopened, Faisal, but what I'm very keen to see is that we see a real generous allocation of plates. There is quite a number of plates out there, but sadly, they're not being used at the times that people want. And we have to make it easier, as we've already discussed, for people to be able to sell on their plates who maybe hit a retirement age. But in the allocation of new plates, we also have to make that attractive so people can afford to get their new plate and that they can match the levels of bureaucracy that are required too.
Right. Now I have a question on our screen. As Sultan is asking, hi Faisal. Previously, I was a Dublin taxi driver from 2014 till 2019, but my license was expired due to the visa issue, and I have passed the SPSV test in December 2021 and applied for SPSV license in January 2022, but still haven't got my SPSV license. It's almost about 6 months. Yes, a lot of people dealing with the carriage office. They're very slow. So any luck with that?
Yeah, well, obviously, I'm not too sure about this specific case, but if this person would like to email me, I'm more than happy to make representation to their carriage office on their behalf. It's just Neale, neale.richmond@oir.ie. But I do agree that there is too many delays. We see this with the carriage office. We see it with work permit renewals. We see it with immigration processing, asylum processing, residency processing. And I think what it's very clear is we need to see the resources put in place by the Department of Transport into the carriage office, but equally the Department of Justice and Department of Enterprise to ensure that these things can be sped up. I think 6 months, of course, is way too long. I'd like to see that halved at least. But as I said, I don't know the specific issues of this individual case, but more than happy to work on it if they contact me directly.
Right. Neil, there are more questions now regarding the delay of Amnesty Scheme visas, because you worked with Helen's department as well. I went through all this thing as well. I've seen this group of Pakistanis, 176 Pakistanis in that group. None of them got the visa. There's a delay for them, and they have a lot of commitment. There are a lot of expectations. They want to visit their families and things. So why there's a delay within Amnesty Scheme, and there are a lot of Pakistanis, 176 in a group. None of them got that, and there's a frustration.
Yeah, there's a couple of things. One, it's the post-COVID return of staffing, which we've spoken about before, and I think it's unacceptable that additional resources haven't been moved to clear that. And it feeds into the general fact that there is a huge amount of a backlog that needs to be cleared. It's not just Pakistanis who are caught in this, it's plenty of people from non-EU, EEA countries. And I've been quite adamant that we need to have a unilateral extension of all work permits and residencies here, be they student or otherwise, in order to basically repay and restore confidence in those people who stayed here through COVID. But also, we have a labour crisis here, Faisal. We are short workers in every sector of the economy. We need to widen out our skilled workers criteria, but we need to, as I've said many, many times before, the Department of Justice and the Department of Enterprise need to work together to clear this backlog by putting more resources and more staff in. They also need to play a more proactive part, working with those who are applying from Pakistan or otherwise who are resident here, to ensure that their applications are submitted correctly. It's an ongoing piece of work. I will continue, as I said, through the summer months to try and work as hard as possible to help these people get what they're rightly entitled to.
Right. Neil, one more question, an ominous question again. There is Fianna Fáil's migrants community department, and they are dealing with only migrants. With the data census, we can see 190,000 migrants are here in Ireland. But from Fine Gael's side, it's not that active. He's asking why it's not active from Fine Gael's side, why they are not allowing migrants. If there's any answer regarding this.
Well, it wouldn't be a Fine Gael issue, obviously, Faisal. It's a government issue. And this is a new scheme. They are going through the process quite fair. They are clearing the numbers. It was only announced a couple of months ago. This isn't something that's going to be resolved in a matter of weeks. But I know that there has been good progress, and I'd ask them to keep patience with the system.
No, I will. Let me rephrase this question. This is regarding the party. Fianna Fáil party, they have a section for migrants. Fine Gael, I went to that events.
Yeah, it's the Faisal. It's the FG intercultural group. Yes, that's the section that migrants come under, and everyone goes through that.
Yes, but the TDs and politicians from Fianna Fáil, they're very active within ethnic community groups and their events and things. Fine Gael politicians, they are not that active in that kind of events and things. Is there any particular reason?
I dispute that, Faisal. Just last week, I was at an Indian community celebration in my own constituency that involved a social cricket tournament. This week alone, I was also with the Scottish community in Ireland, based on an event, again in my own constituency. And equally, Qazi Ahmed, my own local councillor, who's originally from Bangladesh, was hosting an event for the Bangladeshi community. So I don't accept the narrative. And again, we're the party that has more elected representatives from a migrant background, including a party leader who's half Indian. So I think we're very proactive and will continue to be so.
Great. Neil, anything, just one line for the Amnesty Scheme, the people, they are waiting for that, their results. Anything for them, or you want them to approach you, or what they should do during this while they are waiting?
The scheme is open, the scheme is working. It requires an element of patience, but if they are feeling that it's taking too long, to contact their local TD, Fine Gael, Fianna Fáil or otherwise, and ask them to make representations on behalf. If anyone is living in the Dublin Rathdown constituency, Dundrum, Sandyford, Stillorgan, Ballantyre, more than happy to take their representations forward as well.
Thank you so much, Neil. Neil, you are known as friend of working class and friend of ethnic community. So again, thank you so much for joining us, and we will get back to you again whenever there's any issue relevant to ethnic community. So nice of you. Thank you so much for your time, and see you again.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.